I'm so excited to introduce you all today to one of my favorite judicial officers, Thomas Trent Lewis. He's very familiar with some of the issues that we'll be talking about today, which have to do with alcohol use disorder and how that can affect custody decisions. Welcome, Judge Lewis.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for inviting me to talk about this important topic.
When I was asked to invite one of the judges with whom I often work, I thought of you because I have heard you many, many times speak about the importance of co-parenting, the importance of safe child custody orders, the importance of really working together. And you have so many times really made the child or children the focal point in any kind of orders you make. As you and I both know, when a parent is dealing with an addiction issue, that can be very, very difficult. However, if there's a will, there's a way. And that's why I like to tell people about Soberlink, because I think it's such a great tool for both parents, one who is working with AUD and perhaps one who isn't, because it really keeps everyone honest. I know you're familiar with it. Tell us your impression of Soberlink and how it works for families.
Sure. So I have ordered Soberlink. I've also ordered traditional testing, if you will, urine testing for under our California law, of course. And really, as you are so aware, that's just such old technology, quite frankly, and it doesn't do things in real time. And when relationships break up, the biggest struggle is the trust issue. Even if there isn't a substance abuse issue, trust issues really can drive marital dissolution, conflict. And betrayal, of course, is the flip side of trust. Parties generally feel that there's been a betrayal. And sometimes that betrayal has been because you said you were going to be sober and you never got there. Sometimes that betrayal is, gee, I'm struggling. I just haven't reached that place. Your point about children is so well taken. It is the responsibility of the court to sit as though it were a parent. And so having raised two children, a son and a daughter, and having 4 grandchildren, and especially once I had grandchildren, I really had a deeper sense of the vulnerability children. You know, when we're raising our children, we're kind of just want to make sure they're pointed in the right direction. They don't get in too much trouble. And hopefully they only do half the things that we ever did when we were kids. In my case, that would be a good thing. And but children frequently become, and these are my 3 words, the victim, the prize, and the ammunition. And it's the court's responsibility to protect them from being the victim. And it's the court's responsibility to treat them as individuals entitled to protection, unable to protect themselves, and to protect them from being the ammunition in the family law litigation. And so the question becomes, what level of protection is necessary? And testing is a reliable way to protect children, number one, and also to help build accountability and hopefully repair the breach of trust, because it's that breach of trust that causes many relationships to become even more inflamed, more embroiled than they were. And it's not about blaming a parent because they have an addiction issue. Responsibility, accountability, protecting children, those are still part of what the dynamic has to be. So companies like Soberlink that provide the kind of, if you will, online monitoring that's reliable, that doesn't depend on whether or not somebody claims they got a message to go pee in a cup or knew that they had a responsibility to do something. The Soberlink tools, those technological tools, just think about your own calendar. 30 years ago, your calendar didn't pop up a message on a screen and say, you have a meeting in 10 minutes. Now, when we don't get those, we go, what's wrong with our digital calendar. So I think that this is innovative. I think it's a way to protect children. And ultimately, that's the court's biggest responsibility. And it's the parents' highest duty.
Totally agree. And to kind of riff off of what you were saying about ammunition and get into the fact that I do believe, I believe in the evolution of dissolution. And when we created it,
yes, I do.
That was a big part of it. Tools like Soberlink really, really help prevent children from being used as ammunition because it normalizes and makes it simpler and more convenient to test and prove and to build that trust so that this idea of addiction, AUD is not something that somebody can use as a sword or use the kids as ammunition or
right.
as ammunition. People have addictions. People have AUD, and to accept that and understand that's a disease. It's not a moral failure. It's not a parent that's a worse parent because he or she has this issue. We know this is happening. We know it's an issue. Let's figure out a good way of dealing with it, normalizing it, and moving forward into a shared custody plan that works, as opposed to there's something wrong with you. You have a failure, and therefore I'm a better parent and I should have the children more and I should have more control. That ammunition piece, I think, is so important when we're talking about custody. And again, this evolution of dissolution is finding tools to kind of normalize issues we know come up again and again, taking the kind of stigma away from it and dealing with the problem as opposed to finger pointing and labeling.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And it's interesting just talking about technology that, we have technology to measure alcohol. We don't have technology to measure, for instance, marijuana use or some other controlled substances some of which are legal, marijuana use. But you see, it's not the legality of the use of something. It's a question of impairment and whether or not that impairment is having an adverse effect on the children. And demonizing a parent, we would never see someone file a lengthy declaration saying, well, you have diabetes. And, because you have diabetes, you're not a good parent. We wouldn't tolerate a declaration that says, well, your cholesterol level is a little high. And
right. But if you were an epileptic and you refused to take medication and therefore could have a seizure while driving with the children, we'd say, hey, this needs to be dealt with. So it's an issue. The issue is being dealt with by virtue of Soberlink and any other measures towards sobriety and reducing that impairment and then moving on, right?
I think that's right. I mean, ultimately, socially, and for the best interest of the children, if a parent is an alcoholic, and that's the phrase, of course, that we see in 12-step programs and otherwise, Soberlink is hopefully a bridge that can help a parent to be inspired to see that they can live life differently. And frankly, there's all the psychological issues of triggering events. What triggers a person to resort to substances? And they're usually self-medicating some form of pain, or they're just trapped in the bondage to a terrible addiction. But we shouldn't turn that into a moral judgment of their character. It may show some characterological bad choices, but that's different than saying, well, now you're no longer dad. Now you're no longer mom because of this particular problem and issue.
And let's talk for a moment. I mean, now I'm the parent that doesn't have the AUD, that really is the sober parent and generally is not having these issues, but I don't want to use it as a sword. I don't want to use the kids as ammunition. I really want my children to have a relationship with their other parent, but I am genuinely concerned about what happens when they're in the other parent's custody. This is a great flip side tool for Soberlink because I see that now I've seen the test. He or she has blown into it. I see it comes to me or my attorney immediately. I can rest easy for the rest of the evening because I know that things are copacetic over at the other house and my kids are spending time with their other parent. I don't have to worry about what's going on over there. That I also think is huge in terms of really greasing the wheels to co-parenting.
And it's interesting that there are some evidentiary issues related to things like Soberlink. And because it's machine driven and computer driven, the reliability issue is so much higher. Quite frankly, gaming the machine, if you will, is a lot harder than trying to game a urine test. And we've seen many kinds of ways of people trying to game those test tools, if you will. This test tool, pretty hard to game Soberlink.
Totally. Facial recognition now. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to, check the boxes. And again, from an evidentiary standpoint, if you're on the other side of it, if you're me, the attorney, and you've gotten 3 dirty tests, very easy to say, look, dude, you blew in the thing. It didn't work out. Not as difficult as trying to say, well, the person didn't show up on time, or maybe there was a strange mixture of poppy seeds on a bagel, and that's why, whatever it is.
Right.
All of the arguments that I've used in the past in front of you, Your Honor.
We've all used them. We've all used them. And
it's solid. And I think it's mostly accepted within our community and with the judges as well.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think that these tools, as you say, are evolving. And because technology is evolving, the tools are becoming both more accessible. Costs should be becoming more practical. This is certainly a lot cheaper too in the long run, because all you have to do is have a fight about the lab results. And now all of a sudden you've got to bring in technicians, and they've got to talk about creatine levels and what did you do and how did it work. So
chain of custody.
Yes, change of custody. Is that what we're going to do here? And are we going to put a parent in a situation where they have no access because there's no reliable testing methodology? And it also protects lawyers, because I have always believed that if you're going to have any kind of outside responsibility to notify a parent that they have to do something, whether it's pee in a cup or blow in a Soberlink tool, is who's going to have the responsibility to monitor that? And when it becomes the lawyers that have to become the ones that are responsible for that, this gets the lawyers off the hook too. Yeah. In the way you just described. Number one is, look, dude, the machine doesn't lie. You may not like her, you may not like him, but the machine doesn't lie. The machine is not involved in your divorce case. The machine is not embroiled in your divorce case. And if the principle is, I don't trust my separated spouse anymore, certainly I'm not going to trust their lawyer. And I'm going to try to demonize the lawyer. You never called. We never got the call. The text didn't go through. You spoofed it to a different number. You've heard these. I've heard them. They just create another layer of controversy where this shouldn't have to be that controversial, frankly. That's where Soberlink makes the most sense. And the tool is a good tool.
And again, just on the flip side of it, if somebody is making allegations, oh, he was slurring, oh, I could tell, oh, the kid said this, now you've got the test. I mean, I have been in situations before where I have a client who's constantly being accused of something. I say, let's get Soberlink. Let's shut this down right now, because if I'm the person who's being accused, I am running to go blow into that tube. I want to make sure that it's clean and I don't have to worry about it. And now that takes the guesswork out, and it also takes those accusations and allegations off the table.
It does. And also, I think it creates verifiable accountability, and verifiable accountability is so important. The weight on the shoulders of the decision maker, the judge, when it comes to matters about children. I always thought that judges took the job seriously about making decisions about kids, but I never really realized how seriously until I became a judge, because in many ways, you feel that the responsibility for this child rests on your shoulders. So, deciding whether to order a higher or a lower amount of child support never kept me up at night, but figuring out what the right thing to do for a child has kept me up many nights. Still dedicated, love what we do, but the responsibility is there. It's palpable. And we want to make the judge feel the greatest level of assurance that we can give to him or her that she or he is making the best decision for this child, not just the warring parents, but this child. And that's where the weight is the heaviest. And that's where this tool, I think, can be the most useful. You see, it doesn't really matter to the family or the child how many other cases.
Right.
It only matters to this family.
Right.
It only matters to this family, whether they're rich or they're poor, or whether they have the resources or they don't have the resources. They only have this child, and they don't, and so I think we should talk about it in those terms, the weight of it, not just the frequency of it. The court is the blunt instrument, and its choices are very limited. Whereas skillful lawyers can really participate in meaningful interventions that provide true family healing. And that's where, and these kinds of problems, we're just a blunt instrument. Yes, you're going to test. No, you're not going to test. Mm-hmm. If you do test, then maybe these consequences. For families where we're ordering Soberlink, we're really talking about families that have someone's got an addiction issue, and addiction issues are best treated in treatment, not through court orders. Right. Court orders are there to protect.
And I totally agree. That makes so much sense. And again, as calling the court orders or the court, a blunt instrument, I know you also know from your mediation work as a neutral, what happens so often, particularly now that we're more familiar with Soberlink, now that we are more familiar and normalized with AUD, to be able to say, I have an idea. I'm a problem solver. I have a solution for this problem. Before anybody even orders it, how about we try Soberlink? Soberlink makes sense because we can use this. We can make sure that the party that has the issues is sober when the children are coming to, with, and leaving him or her. And I'm guessing that both as a judge and as a neutral, you've blessed this, suggested this on several occasions. So
I have.
Before you get to the point where a court is ordering this, making that suggestion as a family law practitioner, or for that matter, even as one of the parties, if you're the concerned party or if you're the party with the issue, make that suggestion, put that into the document. I think that can be really helpful. And as you said, Your Honor, you kind of have to want to make a change if you're going to become sober, enroll in a program, work the program, any kind of a process. This seems like it would be the first step. Even if you're not somebody who is on the right path to sobriety, if you can hold it together long enough during the time period where you've got your kids, even that is going to effectuate a better custodial time, a better child-parent relationship, a better co-parenting relationship.
I think that's right. And ultimately, and as you certainly know, and I know you're an advocate of this, and I certainly am too, the settled resolution that parents bring to the table, it has a much greater likelihood of being successful than what a court imposes. Court is there to impose when the parties can't reach consensus through the peaceful path of a mediated resolution. Then judges have to decide, and deciders are called upon to decide. And the hardest thing to figure out is what evidence is going to help me support my decision. And if there's verifiable tests, and there's been sobriety during the period of time of custodial access, then the court, I think, can have more assurance that maybe the child is less at risk. Because a child can be at risk because a parent is abusing their prescription medication just as easily as if they're abusing alcohol. And so it also affords the person with the addiction issue to actually have to come to grips, hopefully for a final time, leading to sobriety, not just abstinence, but sobriety, that this is how we help repair our culture. We take a person who's suffering and we relieve that suffering, and therefore they can be the better parent. The child doesn't have to become, hopefully, the codependent child who spends years and years in Al-Anon trying to figure out, the relationship that they had with mom or dad who just wasn't sober. So I think the lawyers can do far more. And I also will say this, because I've represented them. I'm sure you have too. It's much easier to represent, in a way, the parent who is not abusing than it is to represent the parent who is abusing, because the parent who is abusing is probably in denial, and helping them come around to see that they have some responsibility here socially and mostly as a parent. And if you can't be inspired by your children to do the right thing, then the question is, can you be inspired at all to do the right thing? If your kids won't inspire you to do the right thing, what the heck is gonna?
Totally agree. And with that, thank you so much, Your Honor, for being here.
Thank you, Laura.
Lewis, thank you for speaking with me about Soberlink.
My pleasure indeed.